This is one of my favorite podcasts in the last year. In fact, it's taken a year for the two of us to get together. This is a guy that you're going to meet, has a foot in the future, both feet in the future, a clear view of the complicated world that awaits us, a world that is much, much nearer than you might realize. The things of science fiction are coming quickly. You will not recognize your life by 2030. He has a couple of theories as a futurist that are pretty shocking on how fast change will come. Things are going to be automated. You're going to be able to change your body through automation, through implants, but also through CRISPR. We'll be able to cure disease, and it's already here. Industries, communication, everything will change. The very fabric of morality is going to be challenged, which is why today's guest is so important. He has devoted himself to the difficult questions posed by such a transformation. What are the dangers of this technology? What are the dangers of augmentation? What are the dangers of AI, AGI, and ASI? What about the meddling with your own thoughts? Could you get somebody to vote for somebody without them knowing it? Could you get them to buy a product? How bad will it get? The thing I like about him is he also talks about solutions. His stance on cryptocurrency, the idea that paper currency is going to become a thing of the past soon. He studied at the aeronautical and astronautical engineering department at Purdue University. This is the same school that produced Neil Armstrong and several other astronauts. He's wicked, wicked smart. He's worked in Tokyo on the leading edge of technology. He has seen the innermost parts of Silicon Valley. He is the editor of The Bleeding Edge and chief technology analyst for Bonner and Partners. You are going to love Jeff Brown. So let's start with something that was in the news that I read from IBM that it didn't happen, and that is quantum supremacy.
Right.
First of all, explain what that is.
Sure. So quantum supremacy has been obviously predicted for decades and decades, a half of a century. And it's the moment at which a quantum computer can outperform the most powerful classical computer on Earth. Mm-hmm. And right now that computer is called Summit. It was actually partially built by IBM. And it's one of the Department of Energy's national laboratories, and it's capable of something called 200 petaflops per second, which is just imagine football field-sized data centers full of racks and racks of very powerful computers and servers, and the job is simply just to compute the most complex problems known to man. That's what that was designed for. And one
football field size.
Okay. So you connect all of these systems together, and they're one large, massive supercomputer. Right. And the U.S. has the most powerful supercomputer on Earth. That's the Summit. For perspective, the quantum computer that was developed by Google is the size of a refrigerator.
Wow.
And there's a couple racks of equipment that kind of help orchestrate everything, but it's not a big computing system. It's the size of a refrigerator. And that single computer was able to outperform Summit, the most powerful supercomputer on Earth. And the way they tested it is they developed a very complex problem to solve. And the quantum computer at Google solved it in 200 seconds. 200 seconds. And Google calculated that it would take the Summit computer about 10,000 years to solve the same problem.
How do they know they got it right? I mean,
The measure is to be able to crunch that massive amount of data and come to a conclusion.
So how does that change? How does that change things?
Honestly, it changes everything. The truth is that we'll look back on this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and this will be one for the history books.
This is like a moon landing.
This is absolutely a moon landing.
And it was something that recently there were lots of people that said, "Oh, that's a long way down the road."
Correct. As recently as last year, experts were saying we are a long way away from quantum supremacy.
10 years plus.
Absolutely.
And we just hit it, and it kind of went by, and nobody noticed. And this is the thing that I really wanted to have you on, because we had a conversation about a year ago.
Right.
We were just happened to be in a hotel at the same time at a conference, and you and I pulled a room off to the side just to talk for a little while. And my frustration is that life is going to change so much in the next 10 years. And it's either going to be great or it's going to be horrific. And I don't know which, but I'm excited to find out. But nobody's talking about it. Nobody, when I talk to people and say, no, you don't understand, 2030 is a different world. They can't process that. So I really want to talk to you about, what does the world look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And what are the things we should be talking about? You gave a great lecture on 5G, and I'd love for you to explain 5G.
Sure.
Because this is the key to almost everything. Anything that Tesla is doing with their car, it has to have 5G. But it comes with all kinds of problems with it. So explain just 5G.
There's so much to discuss.
Yeah, I know.
So, and we should definitely come back to the significance of quantum computing. 5G is a wireless technology that's been under development for about 10 years. And the way the industry works is that every 10 years, the industry develops standards and then starts building out the next generation of wireless network. We started all the way back with first generation back in the 80s. We moved to 2G in the 90s. We moved to 3G in 2000, 4G in 2010, and now we're ready. In fact, we need fifth generation wireless technology because fourth generation wireless networks are congested. If you've ever had trouble with dropped phone calls, or for some reason your email won't download, or if you can't actually access the internet on your phone, the network's congested. There's not enough capacity for you to get what you need, and that's why 5G is so important.
The difference between 4G and 5G is not like the difference between 3G and 4G, though.
Oh, it's this is genuinely the first revolutionary wireless technology that the world has seen since the first generation.
So this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the jump between 4G and 5, but it may be the jump between 5 and 10. Somebody described it as, if 4G is a garden hose,
right,
5G is the channel.
Right. So to even make it simpler, our average speeds over a 4G wireless network are about 10 megabits per second. The speeds that have already been demonstrated by AT&T and Verizon are 1 gigabit per second. That's 100 times faster connectivity than what we're used to today over our 4G networks.
So people will look at that and go, okay, well, I mean, I can already watch Disney Plus in my car,
right?
While it's moving and it's driving, and you already have that. That's not where it comes into play. It comes into self-driving cars. It comes into surgeries being performed by a surgeon on one side of the world and a body on the other.
In the field, under a tent, You could have the world's top surgeon in New York operating on a soldier in Afghanistan with no wired network, no fiber optics, literally just transmitting over a 5G wireless network. And the reason that's possible is not just kind of the pipe. It's something called latency or delay. Average latency in the US is about 120 milliseconds. That may not sound like much, but
if you're bleeding to death.
Yes, and there's a robotic arm that's inside your body. You want very low latency.
Right.
And so,
ooh, don't cut that. Right.
Delay. No, it's only 1 millisecond. 5G is only 1 millisecond delay. It's like having a completely real-time connection. If you and I were speaking through holographic images over a 5G wireless network, we couldn't tell the difference as to whether we were sitting with each other or you were on the other side of the world. There would be no perceivable audio or visual delay in our conversation.
So what are the ramifications? Like, what technology is ready?
Yeah.
It just needs that piece.
Mm-hmm.
What are the instant ramifications? 5-year ramifications.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that I think kind of the mainstream press often misunderstands this kind of technology is there are a lot of nuances. Obviously, it takes years to build out and tens of billions of dollars to build out these 5G networks. You probably don't know this, but we have 5G networks right here in Dallas today. Most of Manhattan is actually covered by 5G.
Real 5G?
Real 5G, operating at 1 gigabit per second. The only challenge is it's kind of like a hotspot design. Think about lily pads in a pond. The entire pond isn't covered yet.
Right, and because this needs towers everywhere.
Everywhere. In fact...
it's almost like... excuse me, you'll know this reference. I hope I get it right. But it's almost like the difference between Tesla and Edison on power.
Oh, yeah.
Where DC needed these little power generators everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
It wasn't considered plausible to be able to do. Why is this plausible to do when it's these little transmitters, I guess they would be called?
Right.
Everywhere.
Right. So the unique change in architecture is moving from what's referred to as a large cell architecture, where one transmitter could transmit over miles, versus smaller cell architecture, where we're talking about distances of hundreds of feet, for example.
Why do that?
We have to. One of the things that's challenging about radio frequencies, the things that we broadcast, television channels or radio channels, is they're full. They're completely congested. So all of those very valuable frequencies that we use for television, they've all been taken. And 4G has taken also the valuable frequencies. And so we have to go higher up. Higher frequencies mean higher power. Higher power means we need these transmission devices, these antennas, closer and closer together so we can enable some kind of contiguous coverage.
This is the lower frequency, the longer the wave, right?
Exactly, the longer the wave. Very good. The longer the wave, the longer it will transmit. So you don't need as much equipment. The higher the frequency, you have to use more power and smaller waves.
While we're here on this part of it, what do you make of the people who say it's dangerous, being bombarded by these waves is going to kill us all?
It is a conspiracy. And it's actually a conspiracy that has been fueled by some of the United States competitors.
Right? I've been saying this. People don't believe me.
No,
it is
absolutely.
So clearly.
Absolutely. And that's very factual. I've read the research that's been done on rats, putting a very high-powered transmitter right next to a rat, right inside of a cage. There is absolutely no evidence that these wireless networks, whether they be 1, 2, 3, 4G, have had any negative health impact.
5.
So 5 is higher power, but we don't sleep with a 5G transmitter next to our head. These are obviously at distance from us. And the only one thing that I do recommend when people ask me about this is it's good to use ear pods or whether they're wireless or wired earphones when you're speaking on your cell phone rather than holding your cell phone next to your head. There's no evidence that holding your cell phone next to your head would cause any health damage. None's been published that I've seen from credible medical research institutions, but I think it's just good practice.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does the onlining of 5G mean